A shocking verdict for Amanda Knox.
Amanda is very upset. We're very surprised of the outcome of the decision.
Now reconvicted of slander for accusing an innocent man in her roommate's murder in Italy in 2007. Knox, who was 20 years old at the time, was arrested along with her then boyfriend for the death of Meredith Kercher.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, here we go. How is everybody? I want you to imagine that you have come home to your rented apartment, your little villa in Italy that you share with 3 other roommates, and the door is wide open. You go to the bathroom, and there is blood on the bath mat. And you decide anyway that maybe the door was just left open and maybe somebody's coming back. I don't know why you'd think that, but maybe you would think that. And maybe would you think that maybe that the blood might be due to menstruation issues? And would you want to get undressed, but you have to take a shower? So you're looking at this bloodied bath mat. With a clear footprint on it. Would you think, oh, this is a good time to take a shower? After seeing the door wide open and blood in the bathroom, on the sink and on the bath mat, would I just want to get naked and take a shower? How does everybody feel about that? Well, that's what Amanda did, and that was her thinking that day, according to her testimony. And she thought that someone had menstruation issues and apparently menstruated in an entire footprint that just matched perfectly Raffaele Solicito's footprint. Isn't that amazing? It's the magic menstruation. So she went, but more strangely, let's hear her tell this tale in her own story. I also have new interview. Amanda Knox is in full PR mode, promoting herself endlessly. There's a new interview with her, not as long as the last one. It's about exactly as much as you can take of Amanda Knox, about 10 minutes. So here's from her trial testimony in her trial for the murder of Meredith Kercher. So when I woke up, I don't remember how long it was ago, but I think around 10:30, I was there and I saw Raffaele was still sleeping. So I watched him a little while. Then I said, okay, I'm going home to take a shower and change. And when I came back, we'll go because we had this plan to go to Gubo because it was a holiday that day. There was no school for me anyway, I was going to skip it. Laughs. There's her inappropriate laugh. Anyway, I wanted to go see Gubbio, so I left his house, and when I got near my house, I saw that the door was open. And I thought, strange, because we usually had to lock that door. But I thought if someone didn't close it properly, obviously it would open. I thought maybe someone had gone out very quickly or just downstairs to get something or to take out the trash or something. When I went in, I called out, "Is anybody there?" And no one answered. So I closed the door. But I didn't lock it because I thought maybe somebody would come. Maybe they had just gone out for cigarettes or whatever. Then I went to my room and I am changed. Well, no, I made a mistake. I went to the bathroom. I had those earrings. I had a lot of them. I like earrings. I had them pierced recently, and I always had to wash them carefully because one was a little infected, and I had to take the earrings out and clean the ear. And that's when I saw that some drops of blood on the sink. At first, I thought they had come from my ears, but when I scratched the drops a bit, I saw they were all dry. And I thought, see, she's also giving reason why her blood was mixed with Meredith's blood in this situation. She scratched them, meaning, so when we talk about mixed blood, we're talking about mixed DNA that lit up under luminol of Meredith Kercher and Amanda Knox. And she's like, well, I scratched them a bit, but it doesn't give reason for the mixed DNA that lit up under luminol of Meredith Kercher and Amanda Knox in the hallway and in the room of the staged break-in. So it's so clear that, to me at least, in my thinking, that she unintentionally, as she was staging the break-in, and that's something that's an established fact in the court, is that the break-in was staged. This was a crime committed by more than one person. And that, of course, this is the decision that let Amanda go, okay? It's established fact that Amanda Knox washed the blood of Meredith Kercher off of her hands. That's her exonerating decision. That's her great exoneration. That she was there at the scene of the crime and she washed Meredith's blood off of her hands. And I thought, well, no, I made a mistake. I went into okay, she scratched the blood. Here, I've just lost my place a little bit. I had them pierced. Okay. At first, I thought they'd come from her ears, but when I scratched the drops a bit, I saw they were all dry. I thought, that's weird. Oh, well, I'll take a shower. Then when I got out of the shower, I saw that I had forgotten my towel. So I went to use the bath mat to get to my room, and that's when I saw the blood stains that was on the bath mat. One more time. And I thought that maybe, and I thought that, that's strange. Maybe someone had a problem with menstruation that didn't get cleaned up right away. I used the mat. So this is her magic carpet ride. I used the bath mat. Okay. She's saying I used the mat, but what she's talking about is the bath mat. I used the mat to kind of hop over to my room and hop over to my room and into my room. I took my towel and I used the mat to get back to the bathroom because I thought, well, by now, then I put the bath mat where it was supposed to go. Then I dried myself and put my earrings back, brushed my teeth, and then I went into my room to put on new clothes. So she's saying she used the bath mat to not only get to her room, like sashaying, like doing the twist on it, hopping on the bath mat, scooting it. I don't even know how you do this. On her bath mat to her room, then on her room all the way back, scooting away, twisting away. I don't know, walking with the bath mat on her feet. So that's how she's saying. So this is, in my mind, a clear way to tailor the evidence of Meredith Kercher's DNA and her DNA that lit up under luminol, how it was, there's Meredith, how it was in the hallway, that she's scooting along, and it was her feet, and she used the towel, and it's her DNA. That's how it all got there. That's why that all makes sense. Kind of believable, anybody? Kind of amazing. So these innocence fraud campaigns, what they do so well is make you forget the really important evidence and all of the lies and contradictions that the killer or accused or one time convicted killer got into. So this just kind of has gotten thrown down the memory hole, and in its place is now Amanda Knox interview with Sunrise, which I believe is an Australian show. And on this show, she promotes. She's also had a acting debut. We're going to talk about that another episode. But she's promoting. I think she's trying to get her podcast off the ground. I don't know how successful it is, but she's also trying to promote her new book. So the name of this is How Amanda Dealt with Being Wrongfully Accused. She wasn't wrongfully accused. She was wrongfully convicted twice. Not wrongfully, rightfully convicted twice. I say, my opinion, and certainly the opinion of the highest court, is not once again, this crime was done by more than one person. The burglary was staged. Why would Rudy Gude want to stage a burglary? You only do that if you live there and you want to start to make people think it came from outside of the house. Amanda Knox washed the blood of Meredith off her hands. That's her exonerating decision. She was there at the scene of the crime. People love to say she was exonerated, but that's her exoneration.
Good morning. The story is, I was going to say incredible. That's one word you could use. At what point did you realise that you wouldn't be going home at that time?
Well, a good 2 years into my imprisonment when I got that guilty verdict for the first time, because my family and I truly believed that this was just a huge misunderstanding and that the truth would win out. So to hear guilty and sentenced to 20...
Apparently, according to the prison warden who guarded her, that she always was self-possessed, felt that she had no trouble sleeping, total confidence that she would get away with this. And she has, and she's made a career, millions of dollars, just off her book alone. Never mind all the other money that she's made off of Meredith's murder.
6 years as a 22-year-old. I really had a reckoning with what my life was. I was not living somebody else's life by mistake, which is what it felt like at the time. This really was my life, and I had to confront the reality of this tragedy head on and try to live day by day with a very sad and unfair existence.
When did you first get a sense that this wasn't just news in Italy or back in your hometown, but you were making global headlines? When did you get a sense of that?
Gosh, I mean, the first inkling was the first time that my mom came to visit me in prison, which was a few days after I was arrested. And she told me that just in that first moment, when I still thought that this, again, was just a huge misunderstanding and I would be released any day now, she said that the media was all over the case and that it was out of control. And I think even for her in that moment, she didn't really even herself know how out of control.
Her dad hired a PR team before they hired a lawyer to propagandize Americans and to put their story in the media. According, I'm forgetting her name now, who wrote Angel Eyes. She's got like a 3 name, but that Amanda Knox's mother was very involved with the reporters, and that if you weren't on Team Amanda, she would shun you. So, I mean, to say that they didn't realize it was going to be so big, they knew immediately. It was all over the Italian papers. So before she even got a lawyer, she got a PR team, Gregory Marriott, for $1 million. Her father said it was the smartest thing she ever did. I mean, as long as Amanda Knox is going to be out there telling these lies, and what she says about lies is so fascinating coming up. Do not miss it. It's so psychologically telling. Stay tuned for this. This is a whopper revealing interview by Amanda Knox. So revealing. If you've been following Amanda Knox, or if you even know the slightest, tiniest bit about Amanda Knox and her story.
It was going to become, but from the very beginning, this case was huge. And I, as someone who was locked away in a cell, did not have access to it. But every time I walked into a courtroom and I was yelled at and cameras were pointed at me, it was clear to me that this was bigger and had huge implications beyond just the people who were directly impacted by the crime that was committed by Rudy Gaudet.
So fast forward 17 years. These days, you and your husband host a podcast. It's called Labyrinths. Tell us about the latest miniseries.
Barbie Latza Nadeau. Her book is Angel Eyes. That's where that story comes from. Tell us about Labyrinths, the podcast that you and your creepy husband do.
In Labyrinths. It's called False Confessions. So what can listeners expect from that?
Well,
Don't you want to hang out with those two? Don't they look like, for those listening on podcast, check out Amanda sitting in this striped shirt, this one of her odd outfits, striped shirt and like black tunic type top, and he's in there in this like 70s shirt with his hair greased back and his hipster glasses on a yellow velvet couch looking like the oddest couple. Don't you want to hang out with those for like an hour or two, talk about wrongful convictions and false confessions, LOL, by people who are really guilty all along? Don't you want to listen to some innocence fraud stories narrated by those two? Come on, who doesn't want to listen to that podcast? Amazing that she's even doing PR for it. The numbers just must be just so large. Who doesn't want to listen to a formerly convicted killer talk about false confessions?
not only have we gathered together a number of the best experts in the world around police interrogations and false confessions, but we've also have really in-depth interviews with people who have been coerced by police, like myself, into making false statements and implicating themselves and others in horrific crimes that they had nothing to do with.
The false statement. So she's also doing this because she's been convicted. I mean, they have a different kind of court system. So the Court of Appeals has affirmed her conviction for slander. She's a convicted liar. And they're like, please lie to us some more, convicted liar, formerly convicted killer, who just only had her conviction overturned because the Supreme Court illegally threw out all the DNA evidence that implicates Amanda and Raph because the pressure of America was so huge, and said it was all unreliable. If that's true, if I were Rudy Gaudet's lawyer, so that what that means is that all the DNA that implicates Raph and Amanda is corrupted and wrong, which they proved in court that it was never corrupted. It was always reliable. But never mind that. and that all the DNA that implicates Rudy Gudet is correct. It's the same lab, same investigators. I can't believe Rudy Gudet's in America, his conviction would be overturned as well. It's absurd that the Supreme Court it's called the Court of Cassation, was allowed to do that, but they did. The American pressure was so huge. You're talking about Hillary Clinton going over there. If you've listened to my past episodes, I was reading news articles where Hillary Clinton was vowing to go over there and free Amanda Knox. That's how successful a $1 million PR campaign can be. And the fact that Amanda Knox is even considered by some in this country innocent, it shows the success of that.
So it's really deeply personal. It's a deeply personal investigation for me, but also incredibly well researched, and it really gets into not just the interrogation techniques, but also the psychology of what is happening inside that closed room of the interrogation room.
So what Amanda Knox is doing, and you've seen her vocabulary expand, is getting a better vocabulary so that she can manipulate and lie to the public and say, this is what happened to me, because she has to contend with so many lies. I mean, we can go over how her story changed. She was caught, and it changed so drastically from each time she told it, and still continues to evolve and change. So now she's learning the language so that she can manipulate the public with the psychology of interrogations, and this is what happened to me. And this is the way lying defense lawyers get out guilty people, with the idea of false confessions. I'm not saying false confessions never happen, but Amanda Knox is not at risk for false confessions. She was not denied food and water. She does not have low IQ. There are all sorts of risk factors for false confessions. Amanda Knox was not under any of them. She made spontaneous declarations. She hand wrote her own note reaffirming her allegation that Patrick Lumumba, her boss, who was very nice to her, did this crime. She falsely accused someone else of doing the crime. And I don't think Amanda Knox supporters, because I'm trying to go back in my mind to when I supported Amanda Knox, fully get the implication of that she falsely accused someone else. Not only someone else, but a black man. And the reason for that was, if anyone saw Rudy Gudet come into the villa, Patrick Lumumba, a black African, would be a good stand-in. And people who like to talk about innocence fraud from a position of race love to use this case as a case of a real wrongful conviction because it fits their narrative. Black guy did it alone. One guy literally said, white pretty girls never commit crimes like this. Give me a break. It's so outrageous and laughable.
How do you feel when you're hearing these other stories? It must be terribly triggering for you.
Oh my gosh, it is, especially now as a mother. Like, there's one story that we cover, Marty Tankleff, whose parents were in his own room when he was 17 years old, or not.
Okay, so I put the link to my Marty Tankleff episode because it's one of my favorite things I've ever done. It took me the longest time to create any episode I've ever done. It literally took years to find all the documents and read them, something that most people don't do when they talk about Marty Tankleff. He is so overwhelmingly guilty. Someone close to the case said it was the best piece of media ever created on the Marty Tankleff case. Couldn't believe we found out some of the stuff that we did. So it's called Did Keith Raniere's Lawyer Kill His Parents? So both Amanda Knox and Marty Tankleff grift off this wrongful conviction stuff. Marty Tankleff, to his credit, is one of the few wrongfully convicted people who've ever really done anything with their life except grift off. He continues to grift off his crime in some ways, but he became a lawyer. So to his credit, I still think he brutally murdered Arlene and Seymour Tankleff, his adopted parents, because they wouldn't let him. They wanted him to drive the quote unquote crummy Lincoln, as he said in his confession. But when he could no longer, he had blood on his clothes. He was really no longer lie. He eventually confessed. It was not just the trickery that his father was still alive that made him confess. He was caught in so many lies in that confession. And I was just reading from I couldn't find all the documents of his first trial. He was the luckiest thing that ever happened to Marty Tankleff is that his father had a shady businessman, because without that, he would have no one to blame for his crime. And from minute one, he was blaming his father's business partner. For example, at the crime scene, they asked Marty Tankleff not to touch anything and not to wash his hands. And they saw him washing his hands in puddles, like rinsing his hands. And he told his cellmates that he wore gloves and that he put the gloves in gas cans, and gas cans eat up the gloves quite nicely, that he would get away with his crime and people would think he was a victim of, this is me paraphrasing, I read the actual quote in the episode of cops playing good guy, bad cop. He now teaches at Georgetown with Adnan Syed, leads classes into undoing, basically solving solved crimes, leads classes where they investigate convicted killers' cases in an effort to get them out of prison. Because that works so well with Anthony Porter. They have duplicated this, I say sarcastically, all over the country. So they have an innocence clinic, and he teaches that. He goes through cases and tries to get people out. But he also, Marty Tankleff, represented Keith Raniere, and Amanda Knox supported Keith Raniere, came out and said he was the victim of a wrongful conviction and his case should be looked at. This was suspiciously right at the time so that's the NXIVM guru, Keith Raniere. That's what I'm talking about. The guy who led NXIVM. Amanda Knox was supporting him. And it was suspiciously at the time when the cult leader from prison was offering $30,000 to anyone who could find holes in his case. He was going to do a contest, and instead the next PR move was that Amanda Knox came forward. So my theory, it's just a theory, not fact, based on what I know, is that she took some money to promote Keith Raniere's quote unquote innocence. And her podcast, aside from Jan Serling, has become like a mini wrongful conviction podcast. Does anybody know that podcast led by Jason Flom? By the way, boy, I found out some unsavory things about Jason Flom lately. I think I might have to make a podcast. Really shocking background with that guy.
In his own house when he was 17 years old, and he was blamed for this crime, even though it was somebody else who committed it. And he was directly...
He wasn't blamed. He was convicted and did 18 years in prison. And when Cuomo looked at his case, they realized that they couldn't retry him for the crime of his mother and decided not to retry him for the crime 18 years or 17 years later, something like that, for the crime of killing his father. Witnesses had died or moved on. He had infinite millions of dollars in resources. He came from a wealthy family to fight this. And they weren't up to it. But even Cuomo wrote that in no way in their decision, in the public decision to not retry him, that no way should he be considered innocent and that he is deserving of no money. But instead, I think he got $13.3 million altogether from suing the police and suing the state. So it's a huge grift, this innocence fraud thing. The payouts are so huge if you can get someone out by hook or crook on a technicality. You live for things like them not deciding not to retry you.
He lied to in his interrogation room. They said that his father had regained consciousness in the hospital and told the police that he had committed this crime. And that was so psychologically destabilizing to him that he started to think, oh my God, I must have done it. My father would never lie about me. And as a mother.
Interesting thing also about Marty Tankleff is his sister said to him, well, she took him in afterwards. First he said, did you confess? She goes, why did you confess? And she said he sounded like someone who got his hand caught in the cookie jar. It wasn't like they made me, they lied to me. It was terrible. It was like, yeah, I confess. Get the jig was up. Anyway, she took him in and said, if you did this, we'll still support you. But instead of saying, no, I didn't do it, he just put his head down and said, thanks. Like, yeah, I did do this. And that's when the hair on the back of her neck stood up. If you did this, we'll still support you. If you didn't do it, you'd say, oh, of course, I didn't do it, sis. But they've also scared his sister, who really believes in his guilt, into silence, I believe. Because he's just, again, like Amanda Knox, PR'd. He used the Lonnie Surrey, the same PR agent that the West Memphis 3 used, and propagandized the media and the public into thinking he's innocent. He's also gone to colleges and universities and given talks about his wrongful conviction, quote unquote. They're very similar, Marty Tankleff and Amanda Knox, both equally hugely guilty and hugely supported by PR.
Knowing that a child had, just suddenly lost their parents and then was lied to by authority figures that he was raised to trust in such a brutal and betraying way was deeply emotional for me to talk to him about.
So you've been advocating for legislative change. Has there been any progress? What is it that you're seeking?
Does she work on that look? Do you know what I mean? That look in the mirror? This is her innocent look. That concern, there it is. Does she work on that in the mirror? the doe-eyed, who me look? And I really thought, my thought on it is that she thought the police will never suspect me. I have such a good public mask. People who knew her, she was not well liked. She was, at the time of her arrest, sleeping with 5 different men, known as kind of a man-eater. She, of course, says that's shaming. Give me a break. But that was her reputation. She really got off on the attention of men and got her ego needs met by, and also being a psychopath, in my opinion. She's very bored, and it gave her a feeling of conquest, power, and control. Okay, back to Amanda Knox's ridiculous interview about her false accusation. She was falsely accused, guys, not convicted twice, falsely accused.
King.
Yeah, so my big thing when it comes to false confessions and police interrogations are twofold. One is banning deception. And in the United States, there is some movement on that. There are some states that have banned deception when it comes to juveniles. So if you are
So Marty Tankleff has changed the law so that police cannot lie to juvenile suspects. Personally, the way I feel about it, my boyfriend and I disagree about this. I feel like if the police are solving murder, a taking of a life, I want them to use whatever they have in their bag of tricks. That's how I feel. They have their Fifth Amendment right if they choose to talk, to silence. They choose to talk. Police are allowed to say anything they want. That's how I feel. But New York law now has been changed thanks to Marty Tankleff's. See how these things are useful? And they perpetuate an ideology so that in Queens, New York, they created and they're all over, we have them in cities all over the country, these units that examine wrongful convictions. And really what they are is a get out of free card, in my opinion, to any crime that they can make up any kind of small excuse for and get out people, because there's a whole host of people who are concerned with our mass incarceration. Unfortunately, we have mass incarceration because we're massively violent society.
Under 18 years old, in some states, police are not allowed to lie to you when they're interrogating you. The problem is that, one, not all states agree on this, and two, lies are very effective also at destabilizing the reality around adults as well. It's an incredibly effective tool at manipulating.
Katie's 1993 makes a great point. Juvenile, in my mind, is like 10 years old, which is what this movement, if you've listened to any of the episodes I've done, many episodes with either Jane, or the founder of the National Organization of Victims of Juvenile Murderers, you can hear how they reduce the level of the juveniles that are convicted. So they put up, their propaganda has kids that are 6 and 7, 8 years old, when the average criminal who's considered a juvenile is 15, 16, 17 years old.
Someone. And so I think that it should be banned, just blanket banned. And the reality is police officers don't even need to lie to people in order to solicit information. So it's this false idea that they need to lie to you in order to get information from you. The second part is that I've testified about this in Washington State in an attempt to.
That's sad that she's considered an expert in this. This convicted liar testified. That's so sad. I feel so sad for the people of Washington State that she's considered an expert in anything, except she's an expert liar. If I wanted to get advice on if I committed a crime like hers, my opinion, that's who I'd go to. How to get away with murder, I'd go to Amanda Knox. But on how to redo our justice system and our policing, I would not turn to Amanda Knox.
To change the laws around this. The second thing that I think needs to happen is for all police interviews and interrogations to be recorded. So you can't confront the truth of what's happening behind closed doors unless you know what the truth is. And so I think it is absolutely fundamental that all interactions with police officers in this day and age, when we all have smartphones in our pockets, there's no excuse for why they shouldn't be recorded so that we know what is happening in these interactions.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm all for recording police interrogations. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with police officers having cameras. I think a lot of them feel safer. A lot of police officers have been vindicated by those cameras too. So I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is trusting Amanda Knox's version of events. So does everybody get what I'm saying? So when I'm talking about innocence fraud, I'm talking about it's a movement that is motivated by two separate things. So one is the ideology to change laws to make it harder for people to get convicted, easier for them to get out of prison, easier pro-defense in every way. So, and secondly, and they also want as many people out as possible. But the second half is the money-making side, and that is the machine that makes it so hard, and that is done by lawyers, and they get infinitely rich. It obviously goes to, the judgment goes to their client, the formerly convicted murderer, whatever they did, that usually it's murder, killer, usually goes to them, but usually they owe so many legal fees that they don't really see much of it. So these lawyers are getting really multi-million-dollar payouts for rightfully convicted people. And often police, when they're sued, they'll say, oh, we'll have our insurance pay it. It will be cheaper to pay it out than to fight it. But these people never give up it. And that's why you see campaigns. I mean, there are still campaigns going on for people who were convicted, like Leo Frank 100 years ago. It's also sometimes to push an ideology, like Leo Frank was convicted because of anti-Semitism. They like to attach it to some Central Park 5 because of racism, to some kind of social cause. Amanda Knox, anti-Americanism. There's usually some. Marty Tankleff never had that, which is why I don't think it ever really caught on his deeply the way some of these other innocence fraud campaigns had.
You released a memoir back in 2013, but you've got a new book now called Free. That's coming out next year. What do we need to know about the new book?
Great question. So,
wait, did you hear? She says it's lying. Wait, I'm going to go back and listen to that again. So she talks about how destabilizing it is when someone lies to you. Destabilizing. That's exactly what she's doing. Wait, I'm going to go back and listen again. 3 minutes. She's like, it's so destabilizing. I just want to get back to that. Here's her book. She's like, it's so destabilizing when people lie to you. It's exactly what she's doing. She knows what she's doing. And that's what she did to the police. She played cat or mouse. Like, I think Patrick did this, meaning Patrick Lumumba, her boss, but I'm more sure than I was yesterday, but I'm still not sure. Maybe it was all a dream. Maybe, she never said maybe it was all a dream, but you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like, maybe I'm telling the truth. It seems more dream-like to me than real. But I'm more convinced than I was yesterday that what I'm telling you is true. But I'm not sure. But I'm still not sure. So she always had an out. She kept them off kilter. And that's exactly what she says in this interview. How destabilizing and lying to someone is. She knows she's infinitely aware that she is a psychopath. And hugely insightful into her own techniques and psychopathy and how they affect people, and her manipulation and how manipulative lying is. She's a convicted liar. The book I want to read is Amanda Knox on lying. There she's an expert. That's a book I'd pay for. Amanda Knox on lying. That's what they should have. Not Free. Who cares about that? But here's her description of it.
Free is all about this over a decade-long process of dealing with reclaiming my life, reclaiming my identity, and finally doing what it took for me to really feel free after I have grown up in a world where I am defined by a crime that I had nothing to do with. It really is about my mistakes and misadventures, reintegrating back into free society, and also culminates in this story of me developing a relationship with the man who put me in prison, and how that has been a part of my own post.
So we're going to see how they cut Menini, but Menini is never is still giving talks in Italian, so it's not in the English language. You have to watch the subtitles, and he still believes she's guilty. And any contact, Amanda Knox is going to now portray them as close friends. And I hope he doesn't participate in this documentary, but if he does, it's going to be cut like we're best friends. So this is Amanda Knox's deep concern that everyone, it doesn't matter whether she proved it, she could have done 25 years in prison. What she wants is everyone in the world to think that she's innocent. So she can, she wants to fool everybody. Gives her immense duper's delight to fool everybody. And she hates the people she can't fool. So Amini was the biggest challenge, the prosecutor. And now she's going to portray it like, see, even he realizes he was wrong. Because we have a friend, because we've communicated. Should have never communicated with her. Think it's a huge mistake. Should have gone no contact. As you do with all narcissistic psychopaths, as all psychopaths are narcissists.
Traumatic or post-traumatic growth. So it's for me, I feel like my experience is really unique in a lot of ways, but the kinds of hard-won lessons that I have gleaned from processing this experience are really universal. And I feel like anyone who has gone through a hardship can really relate to the kinds of things that I am talking.
I'm desperate for money. Buy my book. I'm desperate for money. I have no talents except grifting off my crime. Please buy my book. That's what I hear. Anybody can relate to it. Anybody who's gone through a hardship. Never mind, because I'm the victim. She said after they affirmed her conviction for slander. So she's a convicted liar. No doubt. And she was so sure she was going to win it. And so was I, frankly. So sure that the highest court was going to overturn that because they had made all these new defense-friendly rules. And besides the Italian courts being very defense-friendly anyway, they had thrown out a lot of the strongest evidence of her slander. So I was sure that they were going to let her slide in some way because they've capitulated so much to America already. So she went there thinking it would be a great triumph in all her little outfits with the cameras going. You saw in the opening. And it was a huge disaster.
About. So it's the book is available for pre-order now. If you go to AmandaKnox.com, you can find all of my work, the podcast, everything, and catch up with me there.
All right, Amanda, fascinating to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much. Take care.
You can listen to the...
Oh, Kitties, 1993. Thanks so much. Merry Christmas, Roberta. Merry Christmas to you, Kitties. Thanks so much for supporting the show. Appreciate it. So she's out on full PR mode. Let me see if I can... Now I'm like obsessed. Go back where she talks about lying. I think I got off track talking about Marty Tankleff and his lies. But let me see if I can just highlight this one more time before we go. If you want to bail out here.
In consciousness in the hospital and told the police that he had committed this crime. And that was so psychologically destabilizing to him that he started to think, oh my God, I must have done it. My father would never lie about me. And as a mother, knowing that a child had, one, just suddenly lost their parents and then was lied to by authority figures that he was raised to trust in such a brutal and betraying way is...
This is so hilarious if you actually know about this case. They were his adopted parents. He was a spoiled rich kid who killed his parents. End this story. Horrible guy. He was just a little kid who lost his parents, and then the police lied, guys. The police lied. They lied. They lied.
Was deeply emotional for me to talk to him about.
So you've been advocating for legislative change. Has there been any progress? What is it that you're seeking?
Yeah, so my big thing when it comes to false confessions and police interrogations are twofold. One is banning deception. And in the United States, there is some movement on that. There are some states that have banned deception when it comes to juveniles. So if you are under 18 years old, in some states, police are not allowed to lie to you when they're interrogating you. The problem is that, one, not all states agree on this, and two, lies are very effective also at destabilizing the reality around adults as well. It's an incredible...
There. This is what I wanted. I'm so glad I went to the right part. That is so telling. That is so telling. That's exactly how Amanda Knox works. It's so destabilizing to your reality. Even I, who know this case, have questioned my own reality. Time when you have that many people going, no, don't you see? Don't you see that just Rudy did it alone? Never mind that no court believes that one person did it alone. Never mind all the damning evidence. Just put that aside. You really think, well, what do you think happened? Because it's so hard to imagine how this crime actually happened. And I still don't know the mechanics of it. I'll never know who moved what, who did what. I happen to think I have a theory on it. But the actual mechanics of how it all happened, how the violence happened, I don't know. I know that Meredith was restrained from the evidence, but who did what? Hard to know. She happened to have female-sized bruises on her arms. Size 7 shoe print in her blood. Happened to be Amanda Knox's size shoe. I happen to think that Amanda Knox would have been the one to plunge the knife. Same thing that Amini.
Effective tool at manipulating someone. And so I think that it should be banned, just blanket ban.
It's a really destabilizing and manipulating technique. Thank you, Amanda. That's exactly how she's worked. That's exactly how she worked with the Italian police and investigators. That's how she got away with it. She's telling you how she got away with it. Right there. Should we listen one more time?
Incredibly effective tool at manipulating someone. And so I think that it should be banned, just blank.
Yeah, you first, Amanda Knox. You first. Starting with you. Starting with a ban on your lies. Just come out and said you did it. They can't retry you. Start getting the truth. No one would buy your book though, right? You got to keep grifting. That's what I have for today, guys. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I may be back tomorrow. It's usually my day off, but I have to travel on the 24th. So I don't know if I can do a show on that day. So I may try to trade tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I also have a lot of Christmas stuff to get ready for. I'm hoping to do a show tomorrow. Check. So I may be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much for watching this with me. Please leave me a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Share this episode. Support me on Patreon. Send me a Venmo. Buy me a coffee. And I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody. Gonna go out with one of my men.
I'm gonna want you to forget. She plunges a knife into Meredith's neck. The double DNA knife we won't forget. Spun cartwheels and then splits at the police station. Couldn't hide your elation. Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you ignored your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Ruined his life with your big fat lie. Murder made a rich. She's a psycho, a slut, and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with the plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. The city of Perugia will chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are. Get out classes and garlic and watch how your skin scorches. We will never forget how you staged a burglary. Covered your ears to block out Meredith's screams. Mixed blood of you and Meredith all over Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary. Remember Earl's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a slob and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with a plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays. The city of Perugia would chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are, got crosses and garlic and watch how your scene scorches. We will never forget how you staged the burglary. Covered your ears to block out Meredith's scream. Mixed blood of you and Meredith all over the crime scene. Keep saying Rudy did it alone, but we are wise to your scheme. Amanda Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary. Remember Earl's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith's blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a slob and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with a plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays.